Let's bring in our headliner this morning, Senator John Cornyn, joining us. He serves on the Judiciary Committee, and of course, he will be present for today's proceedings in the Senate trial. Good morning to you, Senator.
Good morning.
Great to have you here this morning. So first up, we are about to hear, we are told, from the House impeachment managers. They are going to take to the microphone and talk to reporters. So what is the message coming from your party this morning as we are about to see this trial begin this afternoon?
Well, we're anxious to hear what the House impeachment managers have to offer. Right now, I don't think the facts are particularly disputed. One of the big questions is, does the undisputed facts rise to the level of a high crime and misdemeanor under the Constitution? You know, particularly this close to the next general election, asking 535 members of Congress to reverse the decision made in 2016 to elect President Trump through this process is, I think, there's some real questions about the legitimacy of this whole exercise.
Senator, in terms of Democrats pushing for new witnesses, pushing for more evidence, how does that square with House Democrats telling us for some weeks now that this is an open and shut case and that they believe the president broke the law?
Well, it strikes me, Ed, that they're a little nervous that the partisan impeachment inquiry that was conducted by Adam Schiff, where the president and his lawyers were excluded from that process, that they're worried that they will be able to meet that threshold that's necessary to convict the president in the Senate. That's why they're clamoring for more witnesses. But in order to accommodate the concern, we've adopted or will adopt the same resolution that we did during the Clinton impeachment, which says the question of additional witnesses beyond which the impeachment managers want to offer initially will be deferred and decided by the vote of 51 senators probably later this week, maybe early next week.
You said you were curious, Senator, to hear what House managers, impeachment managers have to say ahead of this afternoon's trial. We'll hear from them personally in just a moment, but they did put out a statement this morning, and I'll read to you from it. If those efforts are successful, and this is responding to McConnell's resolution, this will be the first impeachment trial in American history in which the Senate did not allow the House to present its case with witnesses and documents. The McConnell resolution goes so far as to suggest it may not even allow the evidence gathered by the House to be admitted. That is not a fair trial. In fact, it is no trial at all. They are making the case that there was evidence presented in this case after the vote in the House on those articles of impeachment. That is their reasoning for saying that there needs to be more evidence and witnesses called. How do you respond to that?
Well, it sounds to me they're in a state of panic, and they realize that what they did through the partisan impeachment inquiry that was rushed in order to meet the Christmas deadline by Nancy Pelosi is not up to the standard necessary to convict and remove a president of the United States. And I don't blame them for being concerned about it because this partisan effort in the House excluded the president and his lawyers, and they're going to now have to deal with a fair process that the American people will be able to see for themselves from gavel to gavel, whereby they will have to meet their burden of proof to prove that this is a high crime and misdemeanor, what literally is a dispute over policy differences. And I think this is obviously a momentous occasion. It's a serious, somber occasion, but I don't blame them for being nervous that their rushed effort toward impeachment won't meet that standard.
But, Senator, when you have said this a few times now this morning, that the president's lawyers were excluded from the House process. In fact, as you know, the House Judiciary Committee invited the president's legal team to mount a defense. They chose not to do so.
Well, that was after the Adam Schiff hearings in the SCIF, in the bunker, that was not available to the American people or to the president's lawyers. They weren't able to call other witnesses, and then testimony was delivered in that one-sided hearing conducted by Adam Schiff, was then leaked systematically to the press in order to construct a narrative. That's not a fair process where everybody gets to participate. It's not transparent, and I think it's they're worried that they have to deal with that hand which they have dealt themselves.
Senator, Fox News is reporting that there is an appetite among senators to reduce the time periods for the impeachment managers, the House managers, and the president's counsel to, and this is according to one source, to the single digits in order to speed this along. Are you part of that? Would you like to see that happen?
Well, I would like to see us do our job, which is to listen to the case presented, but it would not surprise me, based on what we know of the facts and the lack of any real meaningful dispute as to actually what occurred. What is disputed is the characterization or the conclusions people want to draw from those facts. But I do think this case could be fairly efficiently presented to the Senate, and we could then make our decision to apply those facts to this legal standard in the Constitution and do that in a couple of weeks. But again, I'm not foreclosing the possibility that additional witnesses will be called at the request of 51 senators. That right is still reserved, so we really don't know how this thing will play out.
Senator Sanders mentioned a moment ago, we're going to hear in a few moments live from the House impeachment managers. One of them is Hakeem Jeffries, and he was on Fox News Sunday, as you probably know, and he said several times, we do not dislike the president. Do you buy that? Do you believe House impeachment managers when they say they don't dislike the president? How much is personal animus a part of this?
Well, I think personal animus is most of it. It's clear that from the time that the president was inaugurated, January the 20th, 2017, that the impeachment effort was underway. And then it was the appointment of a special counsel that created the Mueller investigation, which ended up with no charges on collusion or obstruction. This is the next in a series of efforts to reverse the election in 2016. I think it's almost completely personal animus. If we succumb to the temptation to convict and remove a president under these circumstances with this sort of record, then this will become routine. And the next time Republicans have control of the House of Representatives and there's a Democratic president, then there will be an impeachment effort. I think that would be a travesty for our country and certainly undermine the authority of the voters to choose their presidents rather than members of Congress.
I want to play a sound of Chuck Schumer blasting Mitch McConnell's plan last night.
It is now certain that Leader McConnell is going along with President Trump's cover-up, hook, line, and sinker. Senator McConnell repeatedly promised the senators, the public, the press, that his rules for the trial would be the same as the rules in the Clinton impeachment. Nothing could be further from the truth.
How do you respond to the minority leader there, Senator?
Well, Senator Schumer is complaining about something which is largely of his own making. He refused to negotiate with Senator McConnell on the rules and resolutions, so that means that Republicans, 53 Republicans, are going to have to vote for the resolution to set the ground rules up. And Senator Schumer really wants to hijack the trial. As you know, the senators are effectively jurors. There's a little bit of a difference between civil and criminal cases in a court of impeachment. But our job is to listen to the case presented by the parties, by the impeachment managers and by the president's lawyers, not to hijack the trial and direct it and orchestrate it ourselves. That's what Senator Schumer wants to do, and I think that would be wrong.
Senator, we'll be talking a lot about impeachment in the days ahead, but it would be remiss to not ask you about the other breaking news this morning from the Supreme Court, that they are now not going to take up this case over Obamacare, the future of Obamacare, and the constitutionality until after the 2020 election. Talk about the significance and how Republicans are approaching the 2020 election on health care.
Well, based on what I understand the Fifth Circuit decided to do with that case, the case is really not ripe, which is what typically judges look at to see whether the facts are complete, whether the record's complete, and they sent it back to the trial judge to reevaluate based on its ruling in the Fifth Circuit. So I think the Supreme Court made the right decision. They've got other important cases to decide, and this one isn't ready for prime time.
All right. Senator John Cornyn.
If I could, just one more question for you, sir, because we are awaiting those House impeachment managers. They are set to speak. We're told it's going to be brief. But all of this is happening in the backdrop of the president traveling to Switzerland. He's in Davos for the World Economic Forum. He was asked during a bilateral meeting this morning about the impeachment trial that is about to take place back here at home. He called it all a hoax, as he has so many times in the past. But put all of this in perspective as we have the president traveling overseas and all of this happening here at home in the Senate.
Well, traditionally, differences over policy have ended at the shore of the United States, and we've always supported the leader of our country in a unified effort as United States dealing with other countries and other leaders. Apparently, all of those norms have been upended now, and it's Katie bar the door. I think it's unfortunate because we need to show our unity as Americans in supporting our duly elected president in the policies that he chooses on behalf of the American people to conduct. And obviously all of this that's happening here back home undermines his ability to do that, and that's a shame.
So 2 quick questions before we let you go. As we await the trial to begin at 1 o'clock this afternoon, where you stand on witnesses being called? Yes or no, you're in favor of that?
Well, I am in favor, and 17 witnesses were called in the House, over 100 hours of testimony. All of that evidence will be available to the impeachment managers should they decide to offer that. Then, like I said, we will defer the issue of other witnesses until after both sides have made their presentation and senators get a chance to ask questions.
Got it. And finally, on the initial point I brought up about Fox News reporting that senators are looking to truncate the amount of time that the impeachment managers get and the White House counsel gets. Is that happening? Is there an effort to do that?
Well, I'm sure there'll be more discussions about that, but I would think that the 4 senators running for the Democratic nomination for president would like to be on the ground for the Iowa caucuses on February the 3rd. You may find bipartisan agreement that we ought to get this done and get it done right, but get it done as efficiently as possible.
All right. Senator John Cornyn, a member of the Republican leadership from the great state of Texas. Appreciate you coming in.
All right. So
thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate your time.